Hello. The purpose of this video activity come along is twofold. First, to introduce you to an electronic spreadsheet, which is a tool that is used widely in business. And secondly, to build the amazing compound machine, which is a machine that will help us solve compound interest problems very easily. So if you're not familiar with how a spreadsheet works, we're going to give you a little introduction about this. So what we have is columns that are labeled with letters A, B, C, D, E, etc., and rows that are labeled with numbers. And the intersections of these columns and rows create cells. So for example, here, this cell is named C4. And we can see here at the top, the name box gives us the name of the cell. So in each cell, we can enter the different types of information. We can enter text, we can enter numbers, and more importantly, we can enter formulas. So we are actually going to do a little bit of everything in this activity. You have the same file, and I want you to follow along. We're going to guide you through some activities, and then after that, you will you will complete the rest. For reference, I have this table here. It's just an image. You can move it around, and it's just to help us remember the compounding, the frequency of compounding, depending on the definition of how the compounding happens. Okay, so we're going to begin by entering in cell B1. Take a look. We're going to enter what is called a label, and we're going to enter the present value. So we're going to enter PV literally and type equal. And that once we press enter, this is what we have. We have uh, a label that says PV equals. If your label is not set up in the right side, you can change the orientation here. Let's say your label was appeared initially on the left like this. We want it on the right. So follow here to just change the alignment to the right. Okay, so here we're going to enter the value of our present value for the problems we're going to solve. For the moment, we're going to leave this blank. I want you to keep in mind that this value that we will put in, we're going to use the address of the cell to manipulate it. So later we'll refer to C1 because that's where this is located. All right, then we're going to put here I for interest rate, and this will be our nominal interest rate. And we will also set it so that is aligned to the right interest rate. And then we are going to add the T for time. I'm going to do T equals, and that gives me another cell. And then I'm going to put here the compounding frequency. We call these in our exercises N. So I'm going to make this N equals, and that will give me the compounding frequency. I'm going to set it also align to the right. For some reason, this one has a different type of font. This one, you notice, is 12. This one is 9. Let's make this 12 as well, so they all look the same. Okay, cool. So now I have my headings for the information that I have. And of course, I need to have the future value. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to type FV equals and make sure it's aligned to the right. And so there it is, my initial bit of information. Okay, so now what we're going to do next is we are going to populate this with different values, and then we're going to use a formula that will give us a future value. That's it. So we can very easily change any of the variables, and then we have our machine. But beyond that, we're also going to build a table that is going to give us everything that happens every period. So let's start with that. Go to A9, this cell here, and we're going to type the word period. So this will tell us the end of a given period, and or the period, and then here we're going to type opening balance. And it may overflow or not. If it doesn't overflow or wrap around, what we need to do is edit this. So watch my cursor. This is going to come here. We're going to open where it says text wrapping and wrap it so it's set up this way. This might have been set up already like this. Then we're going to type here the interest for the period, and then the closing. We have seen tables like this before, and this is what we're going to be doing. And we're going to benefit from using this Google Sheet, which a lot of people call this Excel. It's not Excel. Excel is another program. Actually, Excel was one of the first programs that come to do electronic spreadsheets. So we are going to begin, and let's do something very simple. I'm going to put period 1 and then period 2, and I could fill these ongoing, but I'm going to use the spreadsheet to help me fill the periods. So I'm just going to bring the cursor to where I put 1, the number 1, drag it down. So now 1 and 2 are highlighted. And then I'm going to grab the little corner here, and I'm going to just drag these down. And I'm going to go way down. Maybe I'm going to get something like 60 periods or something like that. There we go. I'm up to 53. So I'm going to carry on a little bit more. Now I'm at 60. Perfect. So that's 60 periods. So for example, if we were looking at months, these each period will be 1 month. 60 periods would be 5 years. And of course, we can make this as long as we want. So that's the power of doing these spreadsheets. And it's filled by itself. To right size it, I'm going to come here. Take a look at the space between A and B. Look how the cursor changes. And I'm going to double click it when the cursor changes. And it right sizes it. It makes it a bit more user friendly. If I wanted to center this column, I can do this and center it if I want to or not. So then it looks a little bit more readable. And so then I'm going to use these, but I'm going to fill these after I enter my information. So let's create an example. And let's imagine that we're going to start with an example that has $1,000 present value. I'm going to enter that. By the way, it's possible that this is already formatted. If it's not formatted, I'm going to do an example here on column on cell E1. I would enter 1,000, and here I would change these format here to currency. So it looks like money. Does that make sense? So just so you know, so I'm going to do the same thing here only because I want to keep the 2 zeros for the 1,000. So I can see 1,000. Notice that it shows me the dollar sign, and notice that it shows me the comma. I didn't have to enter the dollar sign at the comma. I just entered the 1,000. It's the formatting that does this. Cool. So now let's imagine that our interest rate is 5%. We are going to enter these, of course, as a decimal. So I'm going to type 0.05. And that tells me that my rate is 5%. If I wanted to make it more legible, I can come here and edit this as percent. Notice, well, all of a sudden, it's formatted as percent, even though if I look at the value that I enter is 0.05. Pretty cool. So if I change these, for instance, and I wanted to have the rate at 6.5%, for example, I would type 0.065, change the format. Maybe I lost the format. There it is, 6.5%. So I'm going to leave these at 5% for the moment. There it is. And then, of course, T is how many years our investment will grow or not. For the purpose of this exercise, let's put just 1 for now, and then this will help us validate some of the numbers that we have. Okay, so now comes N. So let's imagine that we are going to use n, which is the compounding, which is this table here. And let's imagine that we are looking at a compounding of 4 times per year or quarterly. So then I would just type my 4 here. Okay, pretty good. And the future value. Okay, so this is the first time where we will need to enter a formula. And I hope you remember our formula for future value, but if not, we're going to review it right now. What is important that you follow is this. Pay attention that we are not entering the numbers. We're not entering 1,000 or 5% or 1 or 4. We are entering the cells because the cell identification will help us follow whatever values we put here. And if we change the cell, everything updates. So let's go and enter our formula here. To enter a formula, the first thing we need to do is to press equal. And if you notice right away, the equal sign appears. I really don't have to type much. I could type, for example, C1 for the present value, and that tells the spreadsheet that whatever is in C1 is going to come here. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to go and click on that $1,000. It's not the 1,000, but it's the C1. Notice how it says C1. I'm going to make the screen a bit bigger if I can. Notice how it says C1. So that is the present value. And we know we multiply that. So multiplication sign will be the asterisk, the shift 8. And you notice there it is C1 multiply. And now I'm going to do my formula. 1 plus the interest rate, which is here on C2. Yeah. Interest rate divided by n, which is here, C4. Very good. And then all that is going to be raised to the exponent. The exponent is the uppercase 6 that we've studied before. And then we are familiar, I'm going to open a bracket, is going to be, we're going to multiply the value that we have for the years times the compounding frequency. And now I press enter. Take a look at how these all came to be. And there is our future value given these conditions. Good. Very nice. I hope you must have this value in the calculations that we did. If not, review it. Review the video again. So this allows us to change very quickly anything we want. So for example, if my compounding changed to monthly, all I have to do here is do 12. And when I press enter, the value for the future value updated immediately. You saw how it changed. If instead of having 1 year, I had 10 years, I just type 10 and look what's going to happen to the future value. Of course, it's going to grow because the money is going to be invested for a long time. Now is 1,647 and so on and so forth. What if instead of having 1,000, I had 1,500? Dollars. So when I press enter, all this is updated instantly. So I kind of have my machine already. I build this machine that calculates future value very easily. The only thing I have to change is my parameters here, and this future value is there. Fantastic. Um, I need you to verify that these calculations that we did are matching what you have. Otherwise, you might have a little error. So let's change these one last time and imagine that our rate of interest is 6.5%. When I press enter, that updates. So if we had $1,500 at a rate of 6.5% compounded monthly for 10 years, it would grow to 2,868.28. Pretty cool. The last thing we're going to do, well, next we're going to do two more things. One thing we're going to do is build this table. Now, these will require, I wanted to build a table because there's something interesting here that I want you to learn. If you don't know it, you might know it already. But so we are going to build basically this table that we've done before. And of course, this looks like a big job because there's 60 periods, but we're going to benefit from the spreadsheet mechanics to make these very easy for us. Okay, so let's start here. The opening balance is going to be my uh, present value. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to enter equals, and then I'm just going to carry my cursor to the value that we have, and I'm going to press enter. Thank you very much. So now it says $1,500. And of course, if I change this to 2000, it would change here, right? Automatically. Very nice. So I'm going to go back to put 1,500. That's my initial value. The interest for the period is a formula. I have to calculate it. And the interest for the period uh, is calculated by taking my initial value. So I'm going to put another formula. I'm going to come here and enter equal for my formula. And it's going to be the opening balance. And the opening balance. And I'm going to multiply that by the interest rate for that period. And the interest rate for that period is going to be my interest rate divided by the compounding, in this case 12. And I hope these make sense to you. So in other words, this is how much $1,500 would earn after 1 month of interest at 6.5%. So I hope this makes sense and that you are following with no major trouble. And let's take a look at what has happened now that we have this. Okay, so very good. And the closing balance, of course, is just going to be the addition of our opening balance and the closing period. So I'm going to go here equals, and I'm going to pick this plus, it's another formula, plus the interest for the period. And I'm going to press enter. Yes. And Excel is telling me, do you want me to fill the formula, copy these things? I'm going to say no for the moment, just because I want to show you something. Okay, so here is the, after 1 month, remember we are compounding monthly. After 1 month, this is how much balance we would have. So without us having to change this, we can figure out the interest that we made and how much money we have after 1 month. Remember, the period is connected to the frequency of compounding, which is 12. Good. Now let's do the next period. And of course, the opening balance for period 2 is the closing balance for period 1. So all I have to do here is press equals and click on the closing balance for period 1 and press enter. Notice that I'm not putting the value, I'm just typing what is in the cell. Very nice. Now, here's something interesting. Notice that the interest for the period is going to be calculated using the opening balance for period 2, which is in this case $1,508.13, multiply by the interest for the period, which would be 6.5% divided by 12. But these 6.5 divided by 12 is the same for every period. So I need to, instead of copying it every time, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the first period, and I need you to follow this. Every cell that we have entered so far, like C2, C4, B10, are cells that are considered relative addresses. And that means that if I copy something, it will copy relative to the address that I'm using. For example, this formula here, if I were to copy it by clicking and dragging, it would give me an absurd because it's copying the same cells shifted one to the right. Well, that's not what I want. If I copy this here, it would give me the cells shifted one down, but I don't want that. I want the value of C2 and C4 to be fixed. So this is how we do it. Please follow along. I'm going to move my cursor to the C2, and before and after the C, I'm going to put a dollar sign. And before and after the second C, I'm going to put another dollar sign. This makes these cells absolute. That means when we copy this, it will copy the same value that we have in C2 and C4 no matter what. The value for B10 is going to change. So take a look. I'm just going to take these and copy it down by holding the bottom corner and dragging it down. Whoa, and look at what it did. When I look at the formula, it knew I had to do B11, which is the opening balance for this period. But this time multiply by C2 divided by C4, which is the interest rate divided by the compounding. Very good. And guess what? The closing balance is the same formula, this plus this. I don't want to write this all the time. I'm just going to drag this down. So now my table is being built. And you know what? Once I've done the first two, that's all I need, because now the way I set it up, I can just click, hold this, and I'm going to drag this down, and all my data for 60 periods will be calculated. So I'm going to drag this down all the way down to 60 periods. Whoa, look at that. So pretty amazing. I have built the amazing compounding machine. Not only that, but I know my interest for each period. And notice, of course, how it's growing. And I know my closing balance for each period. Pretty cool. And of course, this is live. I can change anything. So what if instead of having $1,500, we had $25,000? $25,000 at 6.5. Look how everything changes instantly. Let's say that we invest these for 20 years and it compounds semi-annually. That means twice per year. So right away, I have my future value. I have the balance at the end of every period. If you notice here, T would be 20 years and the compounding is twice per year. That means 40 periods. So if I go look down, take a look at this value of $89,855.04. And that is what we should have at the end of 40 periods. Here it is. These actually continue if we wanted to go beyond this, but this is the value at the end of 40 periods, which would be 20 years, because we're compounding semi-annually. I hope you follow this. This is kind of cool. All right. Now, bonus. We're going to throw one more thing. So by now, your spreadsheet should look exactly like this. And if it doesn't, and if it's not responsive, go back and watch the video. So let's leave these with a time of 5 years, compounded weekly, something crazy, 52 times. Whoa, and see what happens, okay? And of course, the balance changes. And remember this, because my N is 52, that means each period here is 1 week, okay? So for me to know how much I have at the end of 1 year, in this case, I would have to go to period 52, because that would be at the end of 1 year, right? So at the end of 1 year, I would have 26,677.89. And of course, I can verify this here if I wanted, change these to 1 or not, right? There it is. But I'm going to leave it at 5 years. Good. Okay, last thing, which is kind of a cool thing to do. If your spreadsheet is not open here, open this little tab to show some menus. And we're going to do a graph. We're going to just do a graph to see how our money is growing. So I'm going to click and hold this cells, and I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom, to the 60. There we go. It'll take us a moment or two. So here we are. Okay. I highlighted, I selected all those values. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to look uh, for a graph. Where's my chart? Here. If you don't have it on the menu here, it says insert chart. Let's do that. And of course, it's going to take a moment. It's going to be thinking, and it's going to produce a chart. This is a lot of data that we put in. Whoa, there it is. It's a big chart and it's kind of overwhelming. But let's look at it for a moment or two. This is the type of chart that the software is recommending, but we may not want that. We're just going to make something a bit simpler. So we're going to change our chart type. Take a look. Why don't we just make it, well, right now it's stack chart. We're going to leave it like that. Um, but now take a look at what we have. I can actually move this chart in my spreadsheet. Take a look. So right now my chart is next to my table. And if I click on the chart again, I can come here in the three dots and edit it. Okay. And I'm going to change these. I just want to see the closing balance. So I'm going to move these down here. And this is telling me everything that I put in. It's telling me that the x-axis is the period, which is true. It kind of realized that that was the first thing I had, which is pretty awesome. And it gives me the series that we have. Notice it tells me the opening balance, the interest for the period, and the closing balance. And I could graph each of them separately. Right now, I just want the closing balance. So take a look at what we're going to do. I'm going to click on this little dots and remove the opening balance. Okay, and then I'm also going to remove the interest for the period. So the only thing I have in my graph is the closing balance. And I can see how this is growing. I'm going to close this. And this is my graph for all these periods of how much money I have. And actually, I can hover over the values. And after period 43, it gives me the balance, etc. Pretty cool. So I want you to play with this graph, change it a bit, change some of these numbers. And of course, you have these. I strongly recommend you save it in your drive because you're going to use it for another task that we are going to do. And I hope you follow along and I hope you learn something. So thanks for watching.